Now 250,000. Now, but to get 275. High, but to get 275. 3. Now 300,000. Now 3 1/4. 325. High, but to get 3 1/4. But to get 325. Now half. Now, but to get 300. And hello from Dallas. Welcome to the Mike McGavel Jones Show. Broadcasting live from North Dallas, right off of the LBJ Freeway and the Dallas North Tollway. We want to welcome each and every one of you to the show today, and glad to have you along. We have a very interesting guest today, and I think you're going to enjoy the subject matter and also the intellect of the subject. Should be quite interesting. I'd like to welcome Mike Brandley from Columbus, Ohio. Welcome, Mike.
Mike, thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Thank you. And, of course, I've been wanting to have you on the show for a while, so this has worked out really well. We are actually right in the middle of auction school at
That's
America's
correct.
Auction Academy, and Mike has been teaching, and he's been here for a couple of days and getting ready to go back to Columbus. But what I'd like to do right now is have you tell us a little bit about your business. Tell us the name of your business, because you have a lot of different things going on. You got a lot of hats. But the only thing I will say is that you are what I would consider an expert in the area in the field of auctioneering, and also you are one of the primary people behind the Ohio Auction School.
Right.
And then at the same time, you do expert witness work in regard to auction situations where there is some litigious things that happen. Not to say that there's a lot of that going on, but it does happen.
Not a lot, but
so
exactly.
give us your view of you.
Well, I appreciate that. I've been in the auction business almost 40 years and have sold. I'm trying to think what I haven't sold, quite frankly. That's a lot of auctioneers been in business long enough. Cars, real estate. We have an auction house. We run a weekly auction there for about 20 years. We started writing about the industry just about 10 years ago online, our blog, and thus, as a result of that, getting, as you mentioned, some expert testimony, expert witness work around the United States, and that's been fascinating to be on the inside of some of those cases and learning about how courts and attorneys in various jurisdictions view the auction business, things that people sue about in the auction industry. So I'm helping with that. We're still busy as auctioneers, and we teach. I'm fortunate to teach here at American Auction Academy, the Ohio Auction School. I'm traveling next week to Montana to attend their convention, and this time of year is particularly busy because all those state conventions are generally from, say, November through March or so, and so a lot of running around this time of year.
You do a lot of when we say teaching, you not only teach classes, you do continuing education classes as well. A lot of people don't realize that about half of the United States is a licensed law state, and about half of it is not. So
that's right.
Most everything from Texas east, for the most part, is a licensed law state.
Generally speaking,
and
yes.
then to the west, not so much.
Not so much, exactly.
It's more like the wild, wild west.
It is the Wild West. And you're right. In those licensed states, in about half the states in the United States, there's not just pre-licensing, but continuing education. Mm-hmm. And so I get the opportunity to do some of that as well. Teach at the NEA, at the Designation Academy, the AARE designation in the Accredited Auctioneer Real Estate designation class. I'm an instructor at the Certified Auctioneers Institute in Bloomington, Indiana. So I get to go there once a year and help with that program.
Yep. Now, the state associations that are having their conventions right now, you're going to Montana, and who doesn't want to go to Montana in January?
Right, exactly. So I'll be there.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've had the dubious honor of going to places like North Dakota in January. It's certainly, well, you have to take a coat.
I think there's going to be a coat involved. And, of course, this time of year, you worry about even getting there. I think it was maybe 2 years ago or 3 years ago. I was scheduled to be at the Illinois, the keynote speaker for the Illinois Auctioneers Association convention, and I was at a different convention and
couldn't get there.
Couldn't get there till, gosh, it was 24, 48 hours later. I finally arrived. Snow, ice, this time of year, so it's part of the process.
Yeah, it is a challenge. Let's go back in time. You were born. What was your birth date? What year was this?
1960.
1960. And you were born in what town?
Oxford, Ohio, home of Miami University, and lived just north of there. Grew up on a farm. My father farmed, his brothers farmed, and so our upbringing, my brother and I, was primarily farming focused, and also farm auctions. So we would attend auctions as kids, and that was kind of the way you spent a Saturday afternoon.
Yep.
Is you were at an auction.
You weren't at a mall.
We were not.
Was
we were
there
not.
a mall? There was no mall.
20 miles away, there might have been a mall.
Might have been a mall.
But it was more fun to be at that auction and dig around and meet see your neighbors again and check and see how everybody's doing. And as I always say, the food's pretty good, and so it was an adventure.
Yeah, it's the community event.
Well, exactly.
Everybody's there.
You had to be there.
Yeah.
You had to.
You weren't there. They wondered where you were.
Yeah, that's right.
Do you? So you lived on a farm, and so when did you decide to consider getting in the auction profession?
Well, I was always kind of thought about it. I think when I was 18, when I graduated high school, and I was headed to Ohio State University. Pardon me, the Ohio State University. I had contacted an auctioneer in Richmond, Indiana, Jim Cotnian, and I said, Jim, I'm thinking about going to auction school at some point. I'm kind of excited about the auction business as a possible future. And he said, why don't you come over and help a little bit? So I was 18. I was helping him as I could that summer, and went through Ohio State, got my degree, graduated, went to auction school almost immediately thereafter, and started working.
Do you? I think you do. Do you teach at a community college or somewhere there locally?
I do. Hondros College, which is started as a real estate college primarily, and now there's locations around Ohio as well as other states around the United States, and of course now you can take some of that real estate online, so they have online programs around the United States. So I'm fortunate they allow me to teach real estate pre-license, post-license, we call it CE, special classes and things like that around the state of Ohio and otherwise occasionally.
What did you get your degree in?
I graduated in 1982 from Ohio State with a degree in mathematics.
Oh, you scare me.
How about that? Yeah. Well, I had to learn my numbers, Mike. So.
I see. Oh, that's really good. That's good. So over the years, I know you've sold a little bit of everything. What did you start out with besides farm equipment?
Well, what we started doing in Columbus, I hooked up with a auctioneer in Columbus, Jack Smith, and he had an established auction business, and I called him. I called several auctioneers to see if I could kind of work with them, and Jack answered the phone, and he said, well, you sound like you're interested. I need a little bit of help. I can use some help. Why don't you come see me? So we sat down and talked about it, and I worked for Jack for about 9 years. Did everything as a apprentice and assisting auctioneer would do. Get his dry cleaning, get him a Pepsi, help load boxes, load furniture, carry things, fold tables, all that stuff. And about 9 years of that, people started contacting me saying, hey, can I hire you? And that's when I realized, gosh, maybe I can break out on my own. I did just that and been doing it ever since.
What's been the most interesting area of auctioneering for you, or do you just like everything?
Well, I really do like the variety of it. Quite frankly, every day is a different day. So we run a weekly auction, and even in that weekly consignment auction, the inventory changes. One week we have guns and coins and jewelry. Next week we have a lot of tools, or maybe an automobile, or artwork. It could be. It's all over the board. So that keeps me interested because it's different every week. Real estate, we do real estate around Ohio and into Indiana as well. We sell cars. So the cars varies, of course. The inventory varies, and the time of year varies. We do it outside, so it's the weather varies for sure. So it's nice that it's never quite the same any one day.
Can't get bored.
It doesn't seem like
If you do, there's something wrong with you.
That's right.
So along the way, you've gotten active with the National Auctioneers Association. When did you join the NAA?
One of the best things I ever did was take someone's recommendation to join the National Auctioneers Association. I think I joined in 1986. and have attended almost every conference and show since then. My state association, the Ohio Association, the Michigan Association, the Indiana Association, I'm a longtime member of those as well. And I would tell any auctioneer that is getting in the business or wanting to get in the business that's just about the best thing you can do is get involved in your state association and the national association, networking with established auctioneers, making yourself known and available to those folks that are plugged into the community, plugged into that industry. Just the best thing you could do. And so I've really enjoyed my memberships and the friends and networking that it's afforded me.
It's helped keep you busy.
It has.
I know we had you come on board to do some classes for our United Country group of auctioneers. And I was on the front end of that. I said,
exactly.
There's a guy we need to bring into United Country to do some classes that could be considered continuing education for them. And you have continued to do that. We've had you come more than one time, I know.
Exactly. I tell auctioneers, quite frankly, and it's no different if you're teaching or trying to get auction business, that you're always on stage. And so I did a class, fortunately, back in, I think, about 2007 or 2008. Sarah Miner was the president of the Indiana Auctioneers Association, and she called me up and said, will you do some classes over in Indiana? Will you do some CE for Indiana auctioneers? And I said, well, Sarah, I don't know anything about that. I've never done anything like that. We had our auction school. I did some pre-license, but CE seemed rather different. And she said, why don't you give it a whirl? And I went over there and taught, and one thing led to another thing, and people said, gosh, he's doing okay at this. He's all right at this. And then I got the opportunity to teach at NAA. And as you mentioned or suggested, you teach one class, somebody in the classroom says, wow, this guy's good, let's have him teach here. And, you're always kind of auditioning for your next job as you go through it.
Which is kind of like the auction business.
It is a lot like the auction business.
Speaking of the auction business, what do you see as in your almost 40 years of doing this, what do you see as the most significant change from your viewpoint? And this is a question I ask a lot of auctioneers, especially because the average person on the street is very limited with their knowledge of the auctioneer. What they see is this fast-talking person. They're kind of amazed at, well, how do you learn that? They don't even realize there's schools. They just go like, wow, that's crazy business.
You must have been born that way.
Yeah, you were born talking fast.
Right.
ADHD, it's crazy at your house. So what do you think the biggest change that you've seen?
Well, the obvious change in the auction business is prior to the internet, all auctions were live. So there was somebody fast talking, and there was a microphone or a sound system, and people gathered around in a ballroom or a backyard or an auction house or what have you. With the internet, now auctioneers can, even sellers directly, can sell their items in a so-called online auction. There's also the hybrid of that, which is called simulcast, which is a live auction with online bidding. That's been a major change in the auction business. But I think a more substantial change, a more material change, is the competition to the auction industry. And a 25-year-old here in the United States has many more choices than they would have had, say, 20 or 30 years ago in terms of where they buy that item. They might buy it at your auction or my auction, but they also might buy it from Amazon or an online or site, or eBay offers choices to buy things. And the speed and ease of buying elsewhere, I think, is a concern, an opportunity, but a concern to the auction industry, because there's lots of other very easy, simple, straightforward ways to buy things outside of the auction industry. And that's going to change our industry. We're going to have to adapt to that.
That's what you think is going to be the major consideration as we move forward, is adapting to the technology and being a part of the technology and understanding that you can't ignore it.
I don't think we can ignore it. And I would cite an example. I think I don't remember which online platform, but there's one of the online platforms that allow bidding over, say, a 5-day period, 7-day period, 10-day period, for example, similar to eBay, that now has a buy it now button. So you click that, the consumer, the bidder can just press, I want it now. Well, I'll tell you, the average 25-year-old or 35-year-old or you or I, quite frankly, when do we want to buy it? We want to buy it right now. We don't want to wait. Waiting's kind of getting out of style.
Passe.
And so I think that's a sign that the online platforms and auctioneers are looking at it and saying, is there another way? I pointed out in a blog here not too long ago that in 2003, 95%, I believe it was 95% of the auctions listings on eBay were auctions, and by 2013 there wasn't 15%
really
at auction because everything had moved to a buy it now format. I wonder if the auction industry if that isn't one direction the auction industry might head.
Have to go.
Is make it a quicker, simpler, easier process.
What do you think the biggest barrier is? I'm thinking of one myself right now, but what do you think is the biggest barrier that's created by the auctioneer for people who want to buy at auction?
Well, I don't think there's any significant barriers. People participate in auctions every day. I can imagine a bidder. I know bidders that are comparing our terms, conditions, warranties or lack of warranties, return policy or lack of return policy to something like Amazon, for example. So my auction house has an item and they're interested in it, and Amazon has the same item. That bidder might well compare our terms as well as the opportunity to buy at a price acceptable and say, well, I can buy it from the auctioneer, but there's no guarantees, no warranties, no return policy. I buy it as is. Once I buy it, I got to pay for it right away. If it's an online auction, I might have to wait for the bidding to end and then wait 6 more days to have it shipped. Or I can buy it from Amazon, have it dropped on my front porch, and if I don't like it, I just box it back up and send it back. So I wonder if, particularly the younger generation, compares, contrasts those methods of buying and says, you know what, that Amazon purchase for that item, we don't all share the same inventory certainly, but if we can get the same item 2 different places, if Amazon doesn't get the nod.
Get the deal. A lot of people don't realize that around 2000, maybe 2 or 3, I'm going to say probably around 2002, 3, the National Auctioneers Association was considering creating a relationship with a major internet company, such as Amazon or eBay. And I was on the board at that time,
right.
And we did take a vote to start a dialogue with both of those companies. I don't know if you and I have ever had this conversation.
I'm sure we have.
But we flew, there was about the whole board. This is even when the board was a little bigger. I want to say we had at least 12 to 14 of us who flew to San Jose and met with Meg Whitman in a conference room.
Right.
And Steve Davis, who is now the chief purchasing agent / disposal person for the state of California, was sitting to my left, and we had Meg right there. And so the whole idea was there was an interest level from eBay to discuss the possibility of doing a joint venture with the National Auctioneer Association, where our members would work with eBay to facilitate sales. It would supposedly a win-win situation. My opinion was at the time very suspect, let's just say, because at the very time that they were discussing doing a JV with the National Auctioneer Association, they were running ads in Dallas, Texas, on Sunday mornings. They had a fast-talking auctioneer, really fast.
Yeah.
And they said, now you don't have to deal with those fast-talking auctioneers anymore because you've got eBay.
Now,
they're running these ads as we're flying
in your marketplace.
In my marketplace.
As you're saying, let's work together, they're saying, you don't have to work with these guys, work with us.
You're working with us.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, okay, what's the upside for us in working with them? Because they're in the business. They've got a board of directors. They're trying to build that business. They need our inventory. They don't need us. And so in the meeting, I raised the question. I let it go all day. We had like hour 3 of the meeting. And there was a PowerPoint, and I'm sitting there watching that thing. And at a certain point, I just said, well, Mr. Davis, I do have a question. And he said, what's that? I said, why are you running ads in Dallas, Texas, saying you don't need me?
Right.
And he said, I did not know we were. And that was just awesome, And so he had to run backwards, And it was an indictment against eBay. I understood eBay, and I also understood that they wanted the inventory. And so, as you are aware, eBay then set out to buy up big auction companies.
That's right.
They bought Cruise out of Indiana, the collector car group at the time. And they also purchased Butterfield and Butterfield,
exactly,
which was one of the great antique collectibles and artwork and things. And they had multiple locations across the United States. So they went about, since they couldn't do it one way, they went about it a different way.
Found another way.
They bought those companies, stripped them of their inventories, and then sold them back. Yep. And they did sell it back, and they sold Cruise back, for about 10 cents on the dollar. I think they gave them somewhere north of $40 million or something, and then ended up selling it back to them for $4 or $5 million. A brilliant business move, I might add. Right. So we all flew home, and the reason I remember that weekend so well is as we were flying home, I was flying on American back to Dallas, and I just recall I was hearing about a tragedy that was happening to a golfer. And it was Payne Stewart, and it was that day. And what was really eerie for me, and which actually raises the hair up on my arms right now, is that Payne was going to meet some friends of mine in Frisco, Texas, 20 miles up the road from here, to look at some land to build the practice course for SMU. And today they just announced that the PGA is moving from Florida to Frisco, Texas, and building 2 golf courses and an Omni hotel very close to where Payne Stewart was going. He was flying here, private jet, and then going to go out and look at that land. And I don't know if it's the same land, but that was the weekend. Now, about 2 weeks later, the National Auctioneer Association flew to Seattle. So I was in that group, and we went to go see Jeff Bezos at Amazon. And we met him and had lunch with him. There were very strange offices. I don't know if you're familiar with how they operate, but their desks were all used doors.
Oh, yeah.
And so the desk that their people were working on were doors out of houses and doors out of motels, and they were on sawhorses.
Right.
Strange. But sounds like Jeff Bezos saved a lot of money on desk. He didn't spend a lot of money on office. Anyway, we had a great meeting. We flew back to our respective homes. And at that time, I can't remember. I don't know if I was vice president or just a board member, but whatever. I think I was a board member. And we reached an agreement, interestingly, with Amazon. We had the contracts drawn up. They were going to be our platform through the National Auctioneers. All of our members would have had access to Amazon to be the platform for our competitive bidding. And then their stock crashed. And you go back to the history of Amazon, so around 2001 to somewhere right in there, they had a major stock drop, and they suspended all contracts. And that ours was one,
including this one,
including ours. So we would have been a strategic partner 20 years ago with Amazon if that had gone down. Isn't that interesting how things happen?
That's just.
And now we're talking about Amazon.
Still talking about Amazon.
And we're not talking about eBay much.
That's right. That's right.
They tried to go into Asia and tried to corner the market on some foreign countries, and they got spanked, and that didn't work. Right. And Meg went on down her road and decided to run for governor of California, and that didn't work. But Steve Davis, he's still with the state of California, and he's still handling all the surplus.
Yeah. Well, you bring up a good point, which is we had talked about the buyers having choices. Today, sellers have choices. And as this software becomes easier to manage, easier to use, can I merely pick up my phone, take a picture of the item, maybe take 3 or 4 pictures of the item, and say, upload it? In fact, I think I can do that today. And are there sellers that are going to say, well, I could hire an auctioneer to sell my personal property. I could hire an auctioneer to sell my real property. But the question they may have is, can I do that myself? Have we made, as the online
Did we
side
turn
of
that
it,
corner?
Well, I'll tell you, we keep having to make the software vendors, rightly so, are making the software easier to use. There's nobody making software harder to use. Everybody's making it easier to use so that they can get more auctioneers to use it. I think as a result, you make it so easy, those sellers can use it too. And then does someone say, well, I could hire and you do the marketing and you do, but if the online platform has the bidders, has the online presence, has so many clicks or views every day, every hour, every minute, the marketing's baked in. And it just makes me wonder if I guess it's clearly both sides. Do buyers have choices, and what choices are they going to make? And do sellers have choices, and what choices are they going to make in regard to the auction industry? I think we've got a vibrant, exciting future ahead, but we just got to stay tuned in to these types of changes.
I think about what areas of auctioneering are easier to maintain as far as consistency in the future. I think artwork, because it is highly collectible. The people who buy high-end artwork, they love to be seen. They love to be known. Even the ones that want to remain anonymous. Anonymous is a very important person.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Anonymous buys a lot of artwork.
Anonymous buys a lot of artwork. And so the auction houses in New York, Christie's, Sotheby's, London, etc., they will continue to do what they do because it's a history. It is an ongoing history, and the provenance and all the things that go along with artwork, whether it's Picasso or whoever the hot one, what the flavor of the month is, whether it's Peter Max or whoever.
Right.
And I also believe that the collectible market will continue to be, depending on what the collectible is. I watched a television show very recently. A lot of people saw it, where country music singer Marty Stewart from Nashville, who grew up doing bluegrass music with Bill Monroe and became next door neighbors and with Johnny Cash, and he has amassed a collection of country and western memorabilia, including things like Hank Williams clothing, George Jones's closet, just a lot, $25 to $30 million.
Wow,
that's an auction.
Yeah,
that's an auction.
Right.
We here in Dallas have Heritage Galleries, less than 10 minutes from where we're sitting. Heritage Galleries is arguably probably one of the most important collector auction houses or gallery. Right. And of course they're doing mostly, not all, but mostly online. So you have to look at what's going on. Where are the trendsetters going with their businesses? And when they sold John Wayne's collection, they toured it around the country. They took it to the East Coast, they brought it here to Dallas, then they took it to the West Coast, and they did that for the Wayne family and the Wayne Foundation. Right. I think it's great that we have these conversations and keep a pulse of where things are going, because I want us to remain relevant. And of course, we train auctioneers. We don't really know how many auctioneers there are.
That's correct.
Because they're not all required to have a license. Lots of people have a diploma. Lots of people are in the business. There's been numbers thrown out there over the years, 30, 40,000 people. I wouldn't doubt that there are 40,000 people that consider themselves auctioneers.
Right.
But it's it too can be like professional golf. And I've compared it to professional golf many times. You have 100 people in golf. Now there's millions of people playing.
Right.
There's only that 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 that are really competitive to the level of a Tiger Woods or a Justin Leonard or any of those.
Right.
And of course, the cream of the crop typically shows up at the National Auctioneers Association conference and show, which will be in New Orleans.
New Orleans coming up in July.
And I bring that up for a point. As you know, we have a Super Bowl coming up. It'll be this weekend based on this show. And it's going to be between the Los Angeles Rams and the New England Patriots.
That's correct.
Now, if you saw the game, and I assume you may or may not have, but I certainly saw the game. And, I have a problem with an industry that churns out the kind of money they do. And they can allow one play in the last 3 minutes of a game to not have the ability to fix a call, repair a call,
right,
or make a call that should be made. Because it's almost like the umps or the refs they can change a lot of things. They can overturn a call.
I was under the impression that they could change a call or correct
certain types of calls.
Yeah.
And it could be their rule book is very interesting. If I ran a rule book like they run their rule book, I probably wouldn't make it in the auction business because somebody would be suing me.
That's probably right.
I want you to think about that just a little bit. How many dollars of betting money in Las Vegas and around the world, and every little square that people sign to at a VFW hall trying to win money, were affected by that call. Because there is no doubt in my mind, other people will think other things, New Orleans would have won that game had that call been correctly called, but it wasn't called. They said it was not interference.
That's right.
Yeah, but then I go back to the previous week when the Dallas Cowboys lost, to the Rams because, in my opinion, 2 calls that were made erroneously and not fixed. Right. A guy brushes his hand over a face mask, and they called it a face mask. Yet the same call didn't take place yesterday in the game.
Right.
What is a quarterback sack? Well, I would think a quarterback sack is when you actually sack the quarterback, or you have your arms around them, or
it would sound like it,
which did not happen the previous week. But it was called a quarterback sack.
Right. And
then it turned the ball over, and they turned around and scored a touchdown. I just think that the boys in New York, at which they are very tied. I've been to the National Football League headquarters. They know what the betting is. I'm not saying there's a grassy knoll other places than just Dallas, Texas, but I certainly question their handling of this. If you're a purist football fan and you saw what happened this weekend, I would be hard pressed to gamble very much on the National Football League.
Well, and as we talked about a little bit last night, the lack of consistency is probably what irritates most people. I don't mind that you make a call like that, but you didn't make that same call last week or 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. You're not being consistent. At least be consistent.
Yeah.
We want to get the call right, but don't treat one team different than another. Don't and Mike, it goes for auctioneers too.
Yeah.
We got to treat bidders equally and fairly and equitably in a consistent fashion. We tell people in auction school to take increments in a consistent fashion that bidders can count on, expect. And I just told your class here yesterday, if you're going to reopen the bid over here and an hour later you're not going to reopen the bid over here, you're not being what?
Consistent.
And that's going to be a problem. No different than the lack of consistency in NFL bothers you, bothers me.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of thing bothers the auction industry.
I was kind of leading you to that path.
Yeah.
And in fact, you stole my line. I believe consistency is extremely important, and it's not just in the bidding; it's in all phases. And I always said this: I'm going to do the same thing, God rest her soul, for my grandmother. I'm not going to do something for her at an auction and not do it for your grandmother.
That's right.
And you need to be just like the microphone. If you're on the microphone, be consistent with what you say on the microphone. Your terms and conditions need to be consistent.
Yes.
unless there's an exception to the rule because of the seller's circumstance or something that is directly related to payment or something weird, check out. But the general terms and conditions of a sale should not change dramatically over a 40-year career.
Well, and I can tell you this from an expert witness standpoint, and we discussed this in class. Could an auctioneer wait for another bid for another minute or two or 15 minutes or an hour or 2 hours or all day? Could they stand there all day asking for another bid? And that was the question. And I said, well, let's say you waited. You had a bid at 9 o'clock in the morning in a live auction, and you waited till 5 o'clock and you're still waiting for another bid, a higher bid, because you're not happy with the current bid. And would that potentially be a problem? And I said, well, it would, because the attorneys for that bidder at 9 o'clock are going to look at your other auctions, and the question is going to be, have you ever done anything like that before? What's your behavior been prior to this? Well, if that's not your so-called customary practice, that's going to be a problem, because they're going to say, then why in this case can you justify, can you explain, can you enlighten us as to why you would do it here when you've never done it before or you don't customarily do it? So consistency has an enormous amount of merit.
Well, the beautiful thing about hanging out with you is we could probably do this for about 2 years.
Right.
Because there's so much we could talk about, and there's only so much time in a podcast. So I would just say that we're going to do this again, and I look forward to it. And when you're in Dallas, of course, I'll have you on. And then when we have auction school, of course, we'll have you on.
Outstanding.
It'll be great.
Love to come back.
We'll have auction school again in June, right before the National Auctioneers Convention. And so that should be a good opportunity to catch up on what's happened the last 5 months, 6 months, and then we'll go to the convention, and then you'll be back with me again in September or October, and then we can talk about the convention.
That's right.
And what all you've been doing. And of course, I think it's obvious if people follow us on Facebook. You're on Facebook. Why don't you tell them where they can see your information and your everything from your writings to your websites and things, so they can check it out.
Sure. Appreciate that. The blog is my name, so Mike Brandley, Brandly, auctioneer.wordpress.com. There's an easier way. Go to Google, type my name in, or type in any kind of auction-related question, and you're probably going to see the blog come up on the first page, or at least that's my design. That's my hope. The website is mbauctioneer.com, and there's links on the blog or our auction company website to our other sites about teaching auctioneers and or the legal consulting and related. So,
and of course, if someone wants to be taught by you in Texas,
right,
that would be, they can go to America's Auction Academy.
Exactly.
America's Auction Academy in Dallas. And you come in and work 2 or 3 days with our students.
Right. And
then if they're specifically in Ohio or in that region, we encourage them to go to the Ohio Auction School.
As you have, exactly.
And see you there.
Right.
I think that's great. And but I think it's been a good show. It's been very enjoyable. It's going to be interesting to see how the football game goes this weekend,
right?
Between the Patriots and the Rams, and of course the Rams aren't supposed to be there. But so even though I've told everyone that I'm not a huge Patriots fan, and I'm really not too crazy about Tom Brady. I mean, he's so good. It's hard to say anything bad about his football, and he's got a beautiful wife, so there's nothing you can say bad about that. Maybe he's just a pretty boy. And maybe we're just being hard on him for no reason whatsoever.
Well, I think I think in his case he's won lots of times, and
we're kind of tired.
You get weary of that. Yes, I can understand that.
Nobody just loves a winner all the time.
All the time.
Well, I can tell you this. I'll be pushing for the Patriots this weekend.
Okay. I imagine you will.
Oh, well, that'll be fun. Well, Mike, it's great having you on the show, and we'll look forward to seeing you again. And on behalf of everyone at the Mike McGavel Jones Show, Zach, thank you for being here.
Happy to help, Mike.
All right. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next time. God bless. And we bid you adieu from Dallas.